Hey there, Cynthia here. Welcome back to my quilt lab, where I am working on the Banyan Batik Block of the Month Solare by the Bound to Be Quilting ladies. So you can see all the links and information for about all of this in the description below. I am working on month 11. We are so close to the end, and it is this little guy right here. It looks awful similar to something we did just a couple of months ago. This is the 5440 or Flight Small. We are making 8 of these, and you can see them right here in the outside corners. So there's the big ones that we did. Now we're doing the small ones. The only difference between this block and this one is the big block had a half square triangle. So this one's just a smidgen easier. Isn't that nice? Let's jump in and see what the fabric has in store for us. Alright, so there's only 3 fabrics. This pretty fabric that's a kind of a bluish cream. There's the teal, and then there is the orange. So let's just talk about the cutting instructions. The fabric 3 has 3 different types of cuts. So there's a couple of 1.5 inch strips. There it is right there. And then a 2.5 inch strip that you're going to subdivide into squares for the corners. And then the rest of it is going to be cut into triangles for the big triangles in the north, south, east, west blocks, okay? And the orange fabric's really simple. It's just the 2 strips of 1.5, so you can see one right there. And the last one is the fabric 5. It's the pretty teal triangles that match in the north, south, east, west. And once again, you can see it's just cut diagonally. So this is kind of how to cut it if you're using the template. You'll see that this is a template just like normal, but you know me, I like to do paper piecing. I got my paper pieces all prepped right here. So let me just tell you what I've done for cutting with them. Alright, so you can see my paper piece right there, and let's just talk about this really quick. This is a 2.5 inch block, and then I made a point right in the center. Half of 2.5 is 1.25. I drew my line, so I got my big triangle, my 2 little triangles, and then I added that seam allowance around the center. You can see more of what I do this in other videos, so be sure to check out the 2 months ago to see the bigger version of this too for more tips and tricks. So let me show you what I do to prep my fabrics for this, because we just need a piece of fabric that's 1/4 inch bigger than what we need. So you know me, I like to pre-fold all of my seams. So if I fold everything back, I need something bigger than this, 1/4 inch all the way around. So this is what I did. Here's my big strip for fabric number 3. It's 1 strip of this. I cut this in half. So I'm doing this one right here. So here's the full strip. What I did was I folded it in half again, folded it in half again. I cut all of my folds. And then what I did is I cut each of these pieces in half diagonally. Just like that. And that is going to give me more than enough space to get this paper piece. In fact, this strip, I actually only need enough for 10 more blocks because I got so much out of the first one. So don't worry. Either way, if you do the template or if you do my paper piecing way, you're going to have more fabric than you need. So no need to worry about that. Same thing with that teal strip. So there's my teal. I just cut the piece of fabric in half lengthwise, and I do the exact same thing. I'm folding it in half, folding it in half, and folding it in half once more, because it's a pretty small triangle, right? It's just these little ones. So I did the exact same thing. I cut the folds, and that's a thick fold right there. And after I cut all those folds in half, I can take this and cut it in half diagonally. And you can see there that that's super bigger than what we need for those two corners. And the nice thing about this is that Batiks, this specific batik is double-sided, so you can use both sides. It doesn't matter to pay attention to how big it is or how one side of the other, right? Right? Okay, so let's jump in and make a couple of these guys, and I'll be right back. All right, so I got my 3 pieces right here. I'm going to start with that center piece. That's the big creamish one. And I'm going to fold back the space between the line between 1 and 2. And I'll put that right there. I'm just making sure it's going to go past. And yeah, it's huge. It's not going to be a problem. I'm going to take a pin and just pin it in place for a second, so that I can flip it over. So the triangle on the other side is right here. So this piece is going to go there. Flip it over. And if you want to audition it, you can do a little audition to make sure it's going to cover the entire piece of paper, and it does. So grab another pin. And now I'm ready to take this to the machine. I'm going to start right here in the corner, and I'm going to seam all the way down right through that seam allowance so that it looks a little something like this. So there we go. There's that seam. Please remember that when you're doing paper piecing, you want to shorten your stitch length, and if you haven't put a new needle in, put a fresh needle in, because the paper will dull your needle out a little quicker than just fabric. Now we're ready to do this other side. So I'm going to fold back this other side. You can see I've already trimmed it away, any excess, with my handy dandy little 1/4 plus ruler. I'll put a link for this little guy in the description below. Love him. If you're doing any amount of paper piecing, it's a really great investment to have. And then we just do the other side as well. So you see, it's going to match up like this. I'm just going to put that right there. I'm going to throw that pin in to hold it in place while I take it to the sewing machine. And then I'm going to stitch all the way through both seam allowances. All right, so let me go do that one real quick and I'll be right back. There we go. I did that entire seam. Give it a little press. So it's pressed out and open. And now the last step is just to trim away the excess. So I'm going to grab my ruler. And because I have everything drawn, it's super easy to line up that ruler and make sure it's square. Well, looks like it's time to trade out a blade. Here's your warning. Go trade out your blades. There we go. So you need 4 of these for each block. And you're making 8 blocks. 4 times 8 is 32. 32 of these. So spend a day in paper piece, getting them all done. To remove the paper, you remove it in the opposite seam wise. So I take that last seam and do that one first. Because I've used a shorter stitch, it's easier to peel off. And here's the other seam. And there we go. Easy peasy. Give it a nice press. Maybe use some best press just to make sure it stays nice and flat. Once you're finished with all of these, we can move on to the next step. Let's go. Okay, so the next step involves those long 1.5 inch width of fabric strips. We are going to piece them together lengthwise. Once you have them pieced together lengthwise, we're then going to subdivide them into little rectangles now, so that the rectangles become those squares. So remember, first seam longwise, give it a nice press. I press towards the dark side. Look, there you go. Press towards the dark side. Subdivide into the rectangle and then start piecing those into the squares. So I'm going to do that. I'll take a few pictures along the way. This should seem very familiar to you, and I'll see you in just a moment. Let's get stitching. Okay, so once you have the cute little 4 squares done and the pretty paper piece or templates triangles finished, grab those plain squares and set everything out just like the picture shows. And this is when we start making these rows. So we're going to make the rows, and then we'll put the rows together to make the final block. And let me just grab my finished one. You'll see as I turn it over that I opened up all these seams. And I did this with the last block too, because I just felt it laid flatter in the corners. But that said, please press the way you are comfortable. No quilt police, of course. I just like to press it open and give it a nice flat feeling. These blocks should measure 6.5 square. So if you need to trim down afterwards, and give it a nice spray of Best Press. I'm going to work on this block right here. I'll take a few pictures as I go, and I'll see you at the end with another finished block. To the machine. All right, there it is. All done. Remember, we are making 8 of these. 8 of these, just like the 8 bigger ones we made a couple of months ago. Hey, stick around. I'm going to put a little bonus picture of the block that I'm working on, or the quilt, I should say, that I'm working on next year. It's super pretty. And if you found any of this entertaining or educational, please give me the thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and I hope to see you all next month to finish up the Solare block of the month. Have a great one and keep quilting. Bye-bye.
Hey friends, Cynthia here. Join me next year in 2024. I'm working on this block of the month named Symphony. It's created by the Frog Hollow design duo of Linda and Deborah. Also made with Banyan Batik fabric. And if you don't have a shop near you doing this block of the month, join me with Adirondack Quilts as I tackle this one, the cute muted blue and gray quilt version, in my shop. See you in 2024.